Yes.
What are they, just tell us.
I ain't done a good job.
Thank you. Where there you go? Where there you going up?
Oh, yeah.
Ram, you did the regular.
It is what it is.
Sorry, I missed.
You can sit here if you want. I can move the table for you. I mean, you don't have to. Oh, okay. Most of them.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Orange County Council for the budget meeting. Before we call this meeting to order, for those, I think all in the audience are employees of the county. During executive session, we will actually house executive session in here. And so if you're going to stay, I'm going to move you to the conference room behind us, and we will call you out as it comes forward so that we will have this forward here. Okay. At this time, I would invite everyone to stand for the invocation provided by Councilman Kim Yance, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Lord God, we thank you for this new day that you've given us. Lord, we pray that you give us tomorrow. Lord, help us be wise with the days and the times that you give us. Lord, help us make wise decisions in the decisions we make for the county. Lord, we ask that you be with the people in the county, be with the workers in the county, be with those that lay their life on the line every day for the people in the county. Lord, watch over us, give us courage to live as you would have us to live and not pay attention to what the world tells us how we need to be. Lord God, be with us and watch over us through this day. In Christ's name we pray, amen.
Amen. Attention, salute, pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
One item we would need to add on the budget discussion is the roads fee for the FY 21 year. So if you would add that as item number 13 before we go into executive session. Normally, I do not ask this, but I will ask for a motion to approve the amended budget discussion items. Are there any others? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the amended budget discussion items?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as being presented with the added discussion of the road fee.
Motion by Ms. Anderson, is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. McDaniel. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign.
I'm sorry.
Motion passes 5-2 with council members Patterson and Carroll in opposition. Next is the general fund FY 21 status after the previous budget meeting. I recognize County Administrator John King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, council. On the last budget, the only addition was the addition of the museum of 25,000. So that just barely changed the deficit to $1,031,450. And also the road preservation fee was added, which was a $10 fee. Since that time, just today, actually, just a little while ago, got some good news, slightly good news, and then some quite disturbing news, which is going to negatively impact our budget and negatively impact our deficit. This is in regards to our workman's comp and our liability and property insurance. For the fourth straight year in a row, our employees have once again done a good job with workman's comp in keeping our losses in check. And we have steadily reduced our annual cost. This year, our cost is going down slightly from 509,000, almost 510,000 to 507,000, a slight decrease. And we've moved from number 24 out of 41 counties down to number 22, which is a move in the right direction. The bad news, and it's all related to the COVID-19 situation, is that our liability is going up $140,000. I believe it's a 20-something% increase, going from $682,000 to $826,000 this year. And that is about $140,000 additional cost. So that will increase our deficit even more. That'll increase our deficit to almost $1.2 million with that change. Any questions with any of that?
Yes, sir. Figured out who, Glenn.
Do you remember, Lisa? I have to look it up. I think there was a motion to add it back. I'm not mistaken.
But they had to follow the guidelines.
It was pending that.
Yeah,
What was pending that?
Pending they did their,
All that,
Okay, all right. I
yes.
thought we gave it to.
I guess it should have shown, it should have reflected, but.
Mr. King, on the liability number you just gave us.
Yeah.
Are you saying that's directly related to COVID-19?
it is related to several things. Law enforcement, which is a national trend. Lawsuits are increasing. COVID liability, which is a big unknown.
Mr. Kami, would you
Yes.
please talk to your microphone?
Oh, I apologize. I apologize for that.
You do as well, please.
Thank you for reminding me. And also, the COVID impact on the financials market. There's also been a lot of losses with the pool due to storms that have hit the state in the past few years. All that's coming to roost right now.
So
Billy?
nothing we've done or have not done caused this increase.
Well, I still believe that we could do better with our risk management program, and that's something we'll start to build in this upcoming fiscal year. I know we originally had it in the budget, and then we pulled it. Council may want to consider putting half of that money in, so maybe 6 months into the fiscal year, we could start working on building that program with the new HR director coming on board. There is a lot of room for us to improve, continue to improve in terms of risk management. But overall, this is due to forces outside of, for the most part, outside of the actions of our operations and our folks.
I got a question. Did we just get the notification on this $140,000 increase?
Just opened the letter 2 hours ago.
Do we have a 90-day notification that we're going out for bids?
Now, Billy will tell you that the other one that we had, I guess it's just maybe a state trust, the IRF, their increases are significantly higher. Billy, are you here?
Yes.
Billy, come on up and tell them what Pam told you.
The Insurance Reserve Fund was who the county belonged to 20 plus years ago. The association was started. Jim can help me with this because he was part of it. Ms. Anderson's part of it. The Insurance Reserve Fund was who we belonged to. It went to the trust, and we participate with the South Carolina Association of Counties now. Of the counties that participate, this was the largest and the only increase across the board to every county that, or municipality that participates with them, which was 21% is what they give us. I will tell you as frankly and as honestly as they have told us in the past, you will not get coverage anywhere else for what they offered for. We would be canceled.
That's correct.
The Insurance Reserve Fund went up as much as 50% this year. Horry County is a main player in the Insurance Reserve Fund. Horry County's law enforcement insurance went up 50% alone. Their property and liability went up as much as 25%. So, you know, it's the nature of what we're living in today. Today is not normal as it was 4 months ago. And it's the environment we're living in, the nature we're living in. Everybody is so happy with the law enforcement.
If they just notified us of a $140,000 increase, are we obligated to give them a 90-day notification period?
As far as,
We're going out to bid.
I guess you could.
Yeah, there is a 90-day clause.
My point in that is if we just got the notification of a $140,000 increase, we should not be held to that 90-day requirement. I may be the only one that suggests that we advertise on the street. I've never suggested that, but a $140,000 increase is just not acceptable. Plain and simple, in my opinion. Now, that puts work on staff significantly. I'm looking at you all and Lisa. Is that possible to do it?
Possible, yes.
Reasonable?
Waste of time, yes.
Council, what do you think?
I personally think it's gonna be the same. I don't think you're gonna get a better. bid and what, the Association of Counties is giving you. I might be wrong, but I really don't believe you will, based on all my experiences in the past.
And
Based on the past.
And the problem with going to maybe a private sector employer is a private sector employer is much different than the association when it comes to looking at the risk in the entire pool. So for example, some of the risks that we carry are very unique to county governments, such as the law enforcement and the jails in particular. And I've seen this in the past where we have gone to a private sector provider, and we've had a loss at the jail, which significantly increased our cost of insurance right beyond that. They're just looking at an actuarial table and saying that this loss is worth paying $100,000 for this particular suit, whereas the association is looking at the impact on the entire pool. So they're going to look at it and say, okay, we're going to fight this, even though this one particular case may cost us more money to fight this one particular case, but we're looking after the entire pool. So our risk is much different than the average risk that is assumed by businesses and stuff like that. So I would carefully consider the concept of moving away from a risk pool. We enjoy a lot more protections with that risk pool than I believe we would in the private sector market.
Out of curiosity, I think you heard you say 41 participates, or what the other 5 did.
Well, like Horry County is the only other one that participates in the insurance reserve fund. I'm assuming the other ones do that also.
Bring yourself insured. So some of the counties.
Some of them are self-insured.
I'll be glad to speak to it from my perspective, if you want to hear it.
Go ahead.
My concerns would be coverage. One of the things, and I worked both under the Insurance Reserve Fund when I first came on board, and frankly, it's horrible. They have no regard for money, they're giving it away like candy. When we went with the insurance trust, we got better coverage. We were able to resolve more cases. I mean, for example, right now, we have pending probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 to $4.5 million worth of claims. And that's pretty typical on any given year. We have been able to resolve a lot of things through our carrier that were a little unique. That save money in the long run. We don't pay unless we feel like we're liable, but the liability, I agree with what's been said. The liability has increased with jail, detention centers, sheriff's departments, EMS, anybody, people are looking to get a dollar. The one advantage we have on the current coverage is for out of pocket, we have a $15,000 recovery that we can get. It doesn't sound like a whole lot, but I'm looking at $28,000 worth of invoices right now that I'd like to get that $15,000 back. So I'm very pleased with what we got. I think if you got in the private sector, what they're willing to pay defense attorneys is going to be significantly less, and therefore when you pay less, you get less. I suggest you stay where you are.
Council, does anybody up here besides me would like to consider going out to bid? If not, let's move forward. Next.
The next item is the establishment of a new animal litter control special revenue fund. This is no change in the spending. This simply takes the spending for the animal control and litter, which is currently in the 210 Solid Waste Enterprise Fund, and moves it to a standalone fund. With that, the recommendation that I would give you is to move a portion of the solid waste fee, which is currently paying for animal and litter control, over to this new fund, and then the remaining amount would stay with the 210 Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. So out of the existing $65 fee, $10 of that fee would be allocated to the animal control, litter control special revenue fund to create the revenues that it currently utilizes out of that fund. And then the remaining $55 would stay with the solid waste enterprise fund. So there will be no fee increase. There's no change in spending. There's nothing that changes other than better accountability for the animal and litter control. It will show up as a piece of the pie on our tax bills. And you'll see this, the $65 fee for solid waste will reduce to $55. And then there will be a slice of the $10 fee that goes towards the animal and litter control. That's the recommendation to
You've
council.
heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to authorize a new category of spending to be taken from the $65? So we're taking $10 from the solid waste enterprise fund, creating a new fund for the sole specific purpose of animal litter control.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. McDaniel, is there a second? Second by Mr. Carroll. Any discussion?
I would like to know the amount, how much, basically how much is that?
That each dollar produces $30,000, so $10 would be approximately $300,000.
So if we're gonna set a fee just for that, and next year they come back and need more money, do we have to raise that fee?
That would be up to council. Yes. In the future, if you wanted to change that fee, that would be up to council. It's no different than if you wanted to raise that, that same amount of money through the solid waste enterprise fund, you'd still have to raise that fee for animal control. Animal control and litter control have always been buried within the solid waste enterprise fund as part of that $65 fee. The only revenue that is generated is the contract that we have with the two municipalities where we provide animal and litter control, animal control services for the two municipalities. And that produces $70,000 approximately in annual revenue. The remaining portion has always been paid for through the solid waste enterprise fee that we charge.
My question is there enough, is that $55 gonna cover our solid waste?
Based on where we were before, yes. Now, we have new operations coming on board with the transfer station and everything. Been significant reduction in costs, almost $500,000 in reduction in costs. So that $65 fee was already paying for animal and litter control and solid waste. So nothing is changing. All we're doing is moving that portion of that fee over to the animal litter control. It's the same apportionment that really was taking place as part of that $65 fee that we were charging.
I feel sure that we were probably told along the way, but I don't recall knowing that a portion of that fee went towards animal litter control. That's okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I do have a question. If we've moved animal services under the sheriff's department, and we have a special fund, are there any other special funds that are controlled with a fee that is controlled by the sheriff's department?
The sheriff's department has several fees in a special revenue fund, 114, is it one? I keep getting confused, 113, 114, one of those two special revenue funds. And that is made up of about a dozen different revenue sources that have specific limitations that are controlled by the sheriff's office. In this particular case, you do control the spending by your budgeting, and you also would control the revenues through the amount of fee that you charge. So you still remain with the same amount of control, just the operations, which have already been moved over to the sheriff's management, just the operations move over. You still control the annual spending through your budgeting, and you still control the revenues through the fees that are charged.
And the current cost of animal services is at or below or over the $300,000 that will be generated from the $10.
That's correct.
I'm asking which, is that going to be, is $300,000 going to be under, at, or over what it would cost to?
It's almost at, it's a little bit over, but it's almost at. So it's essentially, it's just moving the money over along with what the action council has already taken, which is to move the operations over. That's essentially what we're doing. And again, council does not lose control over this. You still control both the revenues through the fees and you control the spending through the budget.
Okay, but it's gonna be like $370,000. You're not counting the 70 in for the cities.
Oh, I am counting the 70 because that makes up for the cost of the service, which is about $350,000.
Okay, so that is just
That's correct.
Okay. All right,
Yes.
got it.
So in the budget, the 2021 recommended is coming out to 287,832. So what happens to that additional, was that 80,000?
So the 287 is actually 45,000. So the current budget that you've already approved is 345,000. 287 was the number that I gave you.
What happens to the extra 25,000?
You gave the extra 25,000, you mean when you take the 370 minus the 344, it goes into a reserve. But if you look at the capital they've requested, this was before we even transferred over, the capital requested was $112,000.
So that goes over to 370. So my concern is they're gonna need more money and we're gonna be raising another fee every year.
Well, as it is now, that will more than cover the cost of the operation and maintenance and also give you a little bit of leeway in terms of capital. Because if you look there, the 370 minus the 341 gives you a balance of about $25,000. So that gives you some money to pay for needed capital when that takes place. So you will actually produce a fund balance in this fund. And over time, you can utilize that fund balance for things such as capital.
Are there other questions? When will we talk about the capital request?
So after tonight's meeting, hopefully we'll get through all of the action items that we have on the agenda this evening. And after that, I'm going to ask council what I think I already know the answer to, which is, are you going to keep the capital millage the same, which is about 6 mils? If the answer to that is yes, then I will have enough information to give Sandy the information he needs in order to produce the final documentation for the public hearing and the third and final reading, which will occur on the 23rd of June. We're already running against that deadline. And the only other decision we'll have to take is one final budget meeting before the next county council meeting next week to figure out that 3 million in requested capital, how to get it down to 1 million.
I still have a question in my mind about the $65 fee that we usually charge, and now it's going down to 55, and I thought we just barely needed that right now. So I just got that in my head, I don't know why, but it's okay.
That was the case before we ended up moving to Twin Chimneys. When we moved to Twin Chimneys, we reduced spending significantly, $400,000, $500,000. By reducing the expense side, we were able to have enough revenues to cover the cost of solid waste services.
All right, that's what it was. Thank you for clarity.
Okay, to try to keep us on track, we've got a motion that's been properly seconded. All in favor of reallocating $10 of the $65 for a special fund in animal control, signify by raising your right hand. And those in opposition, like sign. Motion passes 5-2 with members Patterson and Carroll in opposition. Next is a,
Number 5.
6. Next is the Northeastern First Responder Station fee in lieu of tax special projects fund. This time I recognize our county administrator, Dale Satterfield.
So I'll give this one over to Dale. We do have the ability to utilize the FELO Special Projects Fund in order to cover this requested amount of $122,000.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Council. Want to thank Councilman Brown for kind of heading this project up. 4 or 5 weeks ago, you came to me and was needing to know what we thought it would take to complete the Northern Emergency Services Station. So I got just a quick slide here. To complete the station, we've got 3 main components. We've got the interior upfit on the east end towards ZF Transmissions. That includes a training room, bathrooms, day room, bunk rooms. That would completely complete the building proper as it sits today and complete that inside. When we began the building shortly before I came on board, in order to meet the grants that was given to us from the state, we eliminated a 3rd bay and just built 2 bays. And we're going to look at adding that third bay. And then lastly, signage in front of the building. So when we look at the interior upfit, that would include the sprinkler system. It has to have a sprinkler system in the attic, which would be a dry system, as well as a wet system in the occupied areas. All electrical, plumbing, and mechanical in that eastern end of the building, metal frame doors, 5 windows. The cost proposal to finish the interior completely was $299,300. So that would completely finish the building proper as it sits. I then turned to Davis and Floyd, who is currently managing our design and build of the transfer station. Our objective is twofold for the third bay. That is, it has to fit with the existing roof structure. If we can design and that third bay to attach to the building without disturbing the existing roof structure, that is a large savings to finishing that third bay. And then secondly, to do that, it has to appear as if it was designed that way, not that you stuck something onto the building. So that was our 2 main goals there. And to do that, what we've done, we're going to designate that third bay as the ambulance bay. Why are we doing that? Because we don't have to have quite the ceiling height for an ambulance bay that we would for a ladder truck, fire truck. That estimated cost is not to exceed $300,000. Now, why did we do a not to exceed? Because we haven't completed the basic design work, architectural work, to get a good cost estimate for that. And then last but certainly not least, the sign is estimated not to exceed $7,000. Now, what happened last week was the LCDC voted to fund 80% of that project, which is estimated not to exceed $607,000. So they have agreed to fund $485,000 of that $607,000, which would leave us $122,000 not to exceed to complete that building. And with that, I will try to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to authorize from the special revenue fund fee in lieu of tax an amount not to exceed $122,000 as a 20% match to the Lawrence County Development Corporation's $485,000 to complete the third and final bay of the northeastern service station?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion that we allocate up to $122,000 out of the FEMA Special Projects Fund to complete phase 2 and 3 of the Northern Emergency Service Center building.
Motion by Mr. Patterson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Carroll. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Angela, go ahead.
Okay, how much do we have how much is in that fund right now? I know it's a good bit, but I just want to know just to make sure.
I think the fund balance last year was at $350,000.
$350,000.
Yeah, I can give you a more accurate. Now we've allocated some funding for that. So the fund balance as of the last audit, which was 2019, was $310,000. And this year, with the projected spending and everything, it brings in about $200,000 annually. So we're projected to about stay the same on the fund balance. So the fund balance going into this fiscal year, excuse me, will be still at that $310 or so thousand. And then next year, looks like the fund balance is slated to potentially increase again next year. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, there's plenty of money.
Okay. And the state will give us anything, right?
The state gave us the original $900,000.
I know that.
Yeah.
When we first started, but I know one time we was asking for some other something. We thought we might get something from.
That is correct. When Representative Pitts was leaving the office, that is correct.
We need to get everything, right?
He's gone now. He's now master.
I get some friends. Thank you.
But also at the time, we didn't know we'd be facing the COVID-19 crisis, state and nationwide. Any other discussion, questions?
Regardless of the way you look at this is being paid for with FELO funds. I mean, any way you look at it, it's FELO funds.
Yes, sir.
It's funds that the LCD is collected. They got funds, they take the FELO funds, they put so much each year in there. And it's built up, and that's where this money is coming from, FELO.
Any others? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. 7-0. Next is the clerk report, bailiff pay increase. Recognize John King.
Thank you. For Ms. Lancaster, she's out of town, so she's not able to be here this evening. She said the bailiff's salaries have been set at $70 a day for 9 years. So they haven't changed in 9 years. And they are part-time. COLAs don't apply to their per day. So she, with the upcoming death penalty trial, long hours, and the fact that haven't increased it, she's also indicated that it's not going to impact her budget. So the spending for the bailiffs will be covered within her existing budget. So she's not asking for a budget increase. She is simply requesting an increase in the bailiff pay. I can't remember the exact dollar amount. I gotta look it up. 75, thank you. So it's an increase from $70 to $75 is what she's requesting. Again, that will not impact her budget.
Is there a motion to increase the bailiff daily rate from $70 to $75 with a budget neutral impact? Motion by Mr. Woods, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. 7-0. Next. Assessor review part-time position. This time I recognize county assessor, Jim. I'm sorry.
David.
Auditor. David. I don't see David.
Guess if he's not here, then you can have his trial in abstention.
Let's go ahead and talk about it. He's requesting a part-time position in the amount of $16,849. I don't know. I don't think. Is that, yeah, 514, the explanation is additional workload due to an increased number of property transfers and an increase in new construction. With the advent of that potential 400 to 1,200 homes in the northern end of the county, I see some validity in this. Does anyone else?
Yeah, and I knew that we not. Do that for first one. Not accept this position.
I guess my question, when was this submitted, John?
This was submitted with the budget.
February?
Mm-hmm.
So since COVID-19, they've been operating altered staff, and everything I'm hearing from all the offices is they've been able to hold on. So I wonder if their current full staff can handle the extra workload, would be my question.
Okay.
I went into this budget with a attitude that we got a lot of unemployment out here right now. We got a lot of people ain't got jobs. If there's anything we can do without this year, we need to do without it. And this might be something we can do in the coming year.
All right, moving on. Unless someone has a burning desire to make a motion. All right, we'll move on. Next is E911 part-time position, Mr. Joey Avery. He's requesting $13,456 to add a part-time position in the communications department. The rationale is people who have left high-paying jobs want to work part-time in a job they've been passionate about, but left because of lower pay, which help with the needy coverage times. Any other things, Joe?
There is some others I'd like to add to that, and the sheriff and Major Martin's here, so they can chime in if they like. We've had to go to a second channel, radio communications for their civil process folks. There's just so much radio chatter. It was dangerous on the normal emergency channel. So we've had to pull people to put in that position. Also, with the transition to animal control, that has put a heavy burden on telephone calls coming into the 911 center. And I see those numbers increasing and maybe being even a stable across the board once it peaks out. In the past, animal control would be, animal control calls from the general public would go to the public works department. Those two young ladies would answer the phone calls and then send it to Jeff via radio or telephone. Well, they're calling us and we're having to dispatch it just like we do a deputy, and we're tracking it just like we do a deputy. So we're giving them the accountability for record keeping and that kind of stuff. And that has really put a burden on us that we see coming. Realistically, I should be asking for a full-time person because of those two events, but I'm going to stand my ground and say we'll make do with a part-time person if we're able to get it. But it is much needed.
All right, you've heard the recommendation from Mr. Avery. Is there a motion to add a part-time position in communications line item 519 budget?
I'll make a motion.
The motion by Mr. Carroll, is there a second? There's a second by Mr. Patterson. Now I'll open the floor for discussion. Begin with my right, your left, Mr. Carroll.
So my consideration of this request is that we did move a process from Public Works to the 911 center and now added capacity to what they're doing with more requirements, and it's now part of the sheriff's department, so we'll have to be tracked differently. I think it's a reasonable request.
Ms. McDaniel.
No comment.
Ms. Anderson.
I feel like if it's going to be a problem, that both of those departments together need to get together. We need to figure out a way to resolve the problem. I'm almost about like Mr. Woods, but I really did not want to add any other employees on right now because of the ripple effect of the coronavirus. And I think we're gonna see more, just like we saw from the increase in the management will come. And I think there's gonna be more. And I feel like we've already said we was not gonna try to raise taxes. We're gonna get everything out of the contingency. And I think we need to be a little bit more conservative as we go along doing this. How many, do you have any openings, Jillian?
2. We have 2.
Okay. And I feel like if we work hard enough to get something in those openings, maybe we could be able to work it. And if not, we need to come up with another way. I don't know how it could be done with the sheriff and with you and the administration as a whole to try to get something to help you out.
The only way to handle it is take the phone call from the general public so that we can send it out. That's the issue right now. When these folks call us, they're passionate about the animals, and you're not able to get them off the phone in a timely manner. And I teach my folks protocols, and we're not going to hang up or disconnect anyone. We're going to give them their due piece. And because of that increase in radio traffic for civil process, those kind of things out in the field, animal control, I would have been okay with your cutting that position, but right now I see it as a major safety issue for the citizens calling into 911.
I would like to see a couple of months, and then you can give us the number of calls you receive regarding the animal control, and then we really have something to look at. We just did it our last county meeting, which was 2 weeks ago.
What I did was ran some rough numbers of animal control for 2019. 300 calls is what we documented in 911 center. So far we've documented 712 since the first of the year. So it's inclining as far as the call volume goes. But the thing that is most noticeable is that those calls are not handled by a non-emergent answering service. They're handled by an emergent answering service. So we've got to take calls from people having cardiac arrest, house on fire, as well as individuals having animal issues. And that's what's putting the burden on us.
Yeah. Mr.
I
Jack?
did have a question, I'm sorry. What's different from the process when animal control was under the sheriff's office in 2015? Is there a change to the structure on how you answer the calls now?
The calls were going to Jeff Moore, and then Jeff would call at a later time and we would document that information for him, just in case if he had to go to court or something like that, he'd have a record for it, as well as his record keeping that he had there. But a lot of calls did not come to us, so we didn't document everything because we can't document what we don't know. They handled a lot of those in-house themselves.
Okay, so we had a different line, I guess people didn't call 911 when.
No, sir.
when it was-
They called on the weekends, which was it happened, but it wasn't as regular as we're getting to 9 to 5 calls daily now. They would call to, where's Dale? They would call the Public Works Department and they would have 2 young ladies sitting there answering the phone calls for various things. And they would take that information and then they would pass it on to the animal control directly. It never would come through us.
This is how it was.
That's how it was.
Even in, like, say,
Yes.
2015 and before.
Yes. Now, every call has been transferred to us to take those calls into the 911 center. They would call the, what, Dale, 984-6812, 984-6812. Now they're calling the 984.
So what made us begin this new process?
Say again,
What made us begin this new process?
made it a new process?
Why, the animal control used to be under the sheriff's office previous in 2015 before, right? Oh, I thought, sorry, that's my mistake.
Yeah, it's always been that way through Public Works. And so if they got out on scene and they needed a case number or something like that, they would call in and get that. Some of these puppy pounds that they've gone into, they would contact us and we'd document it, get resources to them, that kind of stuff. But now, since it's directly coming to us, that's where the impact is.
I think we need another line, telephone line, for the animal control.
Let's not talk about telephone line.
I know you don't want to hear that, but I just got to. Okay.
Mr. Wood?
No, enjoy every life I do. And in the past, Joy don't come to us for anything that he absolutely does not need. And I'm just gonna have to hold this time till next time.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sorry. That's all I got to say.
Ms. Johnson? Mr. Patterson?
I've got a couple questions. One, the part-time, what kind of hours is this person gonna be working, or is it periodic?
It would be staggered based on call volume, through the statistics that I would pull, yes.
Okay, and then you said you have 2 vacant positions?
Yes.
How long have they been vacant?
Probably 6, maybe 8 weeks, maybe a little longer than that because of COVID. It was before COVID.
You got some good prospects, hopefully, to fill this soon,
Not really.
but you think you can fill this position?
I can because I have an individual that's going to be retiring and he's willing to work part-time to help us out. And that's really impacts that position because I've got an experienced person working in it.
And well, I'll support you in this one, just don't remain as for now.
Would you be willing to, make one of your full-time position, 2 part-time position and use that person as that?
I'm sorry, Ms. Anderson, I couldn't hear you.
Would you be willing to split a full-time position into 2 part-time positions?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
No, ma'am.
just wanted to know.
I can't give a full-time, but once I get those filled, I mean, we work 12-hour shifts and it's important to have those positions filled.
Okay, we have a motion to properly second. I'll call for the vote. All in favor of adding a part-time position not to exceed $13,456 in line item 519 E911 communication, signify by raising your right hand. And those in opposition, like signs. Motion passes 4-3 with council members Wood, Anderson, and McDaniel in opposition.
Thank you, council.
Next is registration and elections, I believe, none.
No, it'd be fire.
Special purpose tax district, mechanics, truck, and 6 new person crew. This time I recognize our fire services director, Greg Lynn.
If you would do the truck first, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
You can go and pass them out, yeah. I will let Kirk pass some papers out to y'all before we get started, then I'll explain it once we get into that. We put in the 2021 budget request, $70,000 for a mechanic truck in line item 74,200. Our new mechanic that has come on board, I have talked with him several times. He has looked around at trucks and states that 70,000 is not going to be enough money to buy the type of truck we need to buy that's going to need to have a crane on it. The old truck we have now has a crane. It's used all the time for them to pick up parts and motors and skid units. So I'm asking to increase that from 70,000 to 125,000, which would include the truck and some equipment to go along with the truck for the new mechanic. And that would be a change in the budget.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation from Mr. Lindley. Is there a motion to increase? It's on this sheet, looks like this. Increase in the FY21 Special Purpose Tax District, line item 74200 by $55,000 from $70,000 to $125,000 for the sole purpose of purchasing a new fire service mechanic truck. I'll make a motion. Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Second for discussion by Mr. Carroll. I'll open the floor for discussion. I'll be giving my right, your left, Mr. Carroll.
Where does the additional $55,000 come from, Greg?
Jeff, that is just what he has looked at, reading body utility trucks with the body on it.
No, I mean,
He's asking which
not
budget
specifically
line item.
where.
It's 74,200.
Where's the additional $55,000 coming from?
Where are the funds coming from?
It's going to come from the estimated revenues that we feel that we'll still be able to meet the budget.
Even within your
Correct.
proposed budget, you're not increasing the budget. you're just
I'm not
increasing the
I'm not asking for an increase in millage.
This is just when we approved $70,000, you actually need us to approve 125.
Correct. We think it's too low. We just don't think we're going to be able to get a truck. But he
It
needs
doesn't
to-
affect the budget. It's
Correct.
just-
No, it does not.
That's what I want.
Ms. McDaniel, Ms. Anderson.
It's just a mechanic truck, yes.
Correct. This is like a utility truck that will have a generator, a welder, and a crane.
It's not just a truck, like you're.
Yes,
I
it's,
know, but, you didn't put it in the capital, was it on the capital side?
it's not on the capital side. And then the truck could be bought from the fund balance and not in the budget at all, if that's the council's wish, and just take the 125 out. But, it is right now in the 74,200 for vehicles.
But you do have a fund there.
We do have a fund balance, correct. Mr. King would have to, I think it's,
The fund balance of Fund 123 is currently $3 million, over $3 million.
Okay. Mr. Wood?
Oh, what's the matter with the other truck? Is it wore out?
It's wore out. It's approaching about 280,000 miles. This was a truck when Larry Hall was the fire coordinator. They took an old reed body off of another truck and they bought the chassis that we have now and they put it together. It's just wore out. The crane that's on it's wore out, transmission wore out. It just needs to be replaced. The truck is the
It's
oldest.
a nice truck.
Yeah,
That's all I got.
Forgive me, I looked at the wrong line item. It's actually $1.8 million. And our preference would be to actually move this spending over to Fund 134 where all the capital is. So it's just a little bit of housekeeping in that. It does not affect the net on this one. As Greg mentioned, the revenues that come in through the tax millage will be enough to cover this between the Fund 123 and Fund 134, which are all part of the special purpose tax district.
Mr. Yance?
The money you asked for is already in your budget, right?
it's already in the available funds we have, yes. And it's not gonna increase the taxes to pay for.
If I mean, you never come out on that, would you take that amendment?
It doesn't really necessarily need to be that way because what will happen is if the revenues don't cover the expenses, we will draw down the fund balance. But there's plenty of funding within the existing millage to cover this
This
cost.
money is coming from special service tax. district.
Correct.
It's just only the people in the special purpose tax district pay tax.
That's correct.
Everybody in the county don't pay money into this. It's a separate fund.
And this is a 2000 model. This is a 20-year-old maintenance vehicle.
Wait a minute, what? The one we're buying for
No,
$125,000?
the old truck we've got now is a 2000 model. So it's over 20 years old. Yeah. I just wanted to let you know, it is over 20 years old.
Thank you for clarifying. Mr. Patterson, one question, are you expecting any revenue by selling the old truck? Are you keeping the old truck? What's the plan?
It will be sold,
We'll auction it
we'll
off.
auction off. I don't think it's going to really bring much at all.
I guess my only concern is for that mechanic's position, we just allocated 70,000, 80,000 for salary and benefits, and now we're at 125,000. That's $200,000 increase for one position in the fire department last year.
Well, like I said, it's just a vehicle. When we had Mr. Graddick, we knew we had put this in the long range plan that Ms. Kaney asked for. It's been in the plan for now about, I think, 3 or 4 years, planned out to purchase, and it is very much in need of replacement. We do not have a maintenance shop, so we do need a vehicle that has the necessary equipment on it and is reliable to fix these trucks.
Okay, any others? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of increasing the budget from $70,000 to $125,000 out of the existing special purpose tax district millage, signify by raising your right hand. 7-0. Next.
Again, I'm for you, asking for additional 6 full-time firefighters. What Mr. Fatson passed out to you in the yellow, this is a current roster of each of your volunteer fire departments in the county. So if you'll look, you'll see the fire department name. You'll go through these sheets. You're going to see some of our fire departments are doing very well. They have 20+ members. Everybody that's in the yellow, everything that's in yellow means they run about 15% or higher as far as the call volume for those fire departments. But if you look through this list, we have several fire departments that have 5 or 6 members with 1 or 2 that are active. That is, from 2009, when I came here, we had 275 volunteers. As of now, we have 202. That's about a 28% reduction in the volunteer force in the county fire service. That is on the national trend of about 30% that we're seeing across the country. Some of the problem is I hate to say it, but these small communities that are not close knit, and it's very hard to get people to volunteer. With that being said, we have the Lawrence County Fire Department that operates 4 stations. They operate over a 76 square mile district. They average over 1,200 calls a year. And we have 2 24-hour firefighters a shift working in that station. And at night, those are the only 2 on duty, and they're on one-man engines responding from 2 different stations, about 8-minute response from one another. It's gotten very dangerous with the lack of volunteers. We don't have the volunteers responding back at night. And I'm asking again to try to increase our available manpower by 6 full-time personnel to allow Lawrence County Fire Department to operate 2 two-man engine companies in the night shifts and weekends, so that these firefighters are not arriving on scene by themselves for an extended period of time. OSHA requires no less than 4 firefighters, volunteer or paid, to be on scene of a structure fire before you can enter, to have 2 in and 2 out. We have a lot of times 1 or 2 on scene, waiting 10 minutes before we get more help on scene. I'm just asking council to please consider this. This is not, I need 9. I need 9 full-time people now. I'm asking for 6. We currently have 3 24-hour staff trucks. I have 1 firefighter on those trucks at a time. Like I said, 5, 6, 7 years ago, it wasn't a problem because we had plenty of volunteers that came back and responded with them. We don't have that. I don't see this getting any better. We do have a Explorer post that we have started several years ago. We do have a lot of kids that are in it. We're trying to recruit, but we have certain areas in Lawrence County that we have very low population bases. And because we have a low population basis, we don't have a lot of people to pull from that want to volunteer. And as council can see, you have quite a few of our fire departments that are very low on volunteers. And when those volunteers don't answer up, those volunteer departments don't answer the call, we have to send one of our trucks, paid trucks, to answer that call.
Okay, let's see. Is there anyone that would like to make a motion to address the request from Mr. Lynn at this point?
I make a motion.
All right, what's your motion?
To add, six.
Six.
To add 6 full-time firefighters.
All right, there's a motion by Mr. McDaniel. Was there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Second for discussion. I will open the floor for discussion. You on my right, your left, Mr. Cameron.
Once again, where's the $209,400?
You want me to take that one?
Go ahead.
Okay. With the current mix of revenues, which includes a FILO allocation to the Special Purpose Tax District in both the Fund 123, the Operation and Maintenance, and in Fund 134, I'm projecting this will create a potential deficit in the upcoming fiscal year. However, there's an extremely healthy fund balance in the Fire Special Purpose Tax District, so it can absorb this for several years to come. And hopefully with growth, there is some growth I'm seeing in terms of tax revenues from the Special Purpose Tax District. The biggest growth is the FILO growth. The FILO revenues went from $540,000 to about $750,000 from 17 to 2020. So that said, there is a projected deficit with this upcoming fiscal year. And that's potential. It's unknown at this point, but there is an extremely healthy fund balance that would cover this for the foreseeable future. So I don't anticipate that this would impact the current millage for any time in the foreseeable future on the fire special purpose tax district. But we would need to potentially dip into the fund balance. Again, this has an overly healthy fund balance.
But if our projections were wrong and we are deficit spending, we would have to increase millage if we got to that point or reduce service.
That second part is what I would suggest. We'd have to look at reducing services potentially. As we know, though, it is getting more and more difficult to have volunteers provide those services. So this is going to be, unfortunately, a trend that is going to continue. It's been happening for over 10 years now with ISO standards increasing. It's almost a full-time job to become a volunteer fireman. And those folks that want to serve are having to do a lot more just to meet the needs of ISO and the requirements of ISO. And plus with the lifestyles that we have today, it's getting harder and harder for people to provide that service. So we are blessed to have volunteers. We are extremely blessed to have volunteers, but that resource is continuing to diminish, and that's going to be a trend going forward, definitely for the foreseeable future, where eventually we're going to probably end up with very few volunteers. At some point in the future, this will be a full-time paid service completely.
And you mentioned at night, you drop down to one firefighter per engine.
Per engine, correct, Ms. Carroll.
And the requirement or the expectation is that you have four on scene, which is the reason why you're asking for the 6.
Correct. But to put 2 on each truck at, would be a 24-hour shift. But it takes 4 firefighters to do an interior attack if we get on scene. And we just don't have that manpower. We don't have the volunteers that we had 3, 4, 5 years ago. And it's no one's fault. It is the social changes in our society that a lot of people do not want to volunteer for free. And I do think Ms. Kaney's right. This is going to be a continuing issue. We just went through an ISO grade. We have not got that grade back yet, but we were very close to having the ISO rate go up because we don't have enough response as far as manpower going through these calls.
You have 1 more per shift instead of 2, so 3 positions instead of 6. What does that look like? Mr. Kaney, what does that look like? 3 instead of 6.
3 instead of 6 would probably produce a balanced budget in the upcoming fiscal year.
I do want to point out, I ran the numbers just now, if you have the retirement and the health insurance and whatnot, and then take the reduction in reduction in part-time salaries back out, it's only a net increase of about 132,000, not the 200 something we're looking at. So that number is a little more palatable.
You're talking about with 3 positions?
No, it's all 6. I already went 6. Greg, would you reduce your part-time salary to 35? That's what's in here is recommended.
Yes, we would. Yes, that's supposed to be in the budget to reduce.
So we're looking at a net increase of 102, not 213 plus 48 plus 16,307 plus 38,882. The net increase is 132.
If you accepted that, Mr. Kaney, where does that put us?
Those numbers that I gave you already have taken that into consideration. And it is a valid point because the overtime has been significantly reduced from over $100,000, actually $173,000 to $35,000. So the net impact, that is true, but all the numbers that I gave you previously have already taken that into consideration.
You're not full of staff now, are you?
I have 2 openings.
How many full-time firefighters we got in county personnel?
24, 48 shift personnel, we have 15. We have 3 division chiefs. They're Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 positions. That's 20, myself and Kirk, 22, a fire marshal and admin assistant. We have 24 positions.
Okay, back to the questions. Mr. McDaniel.
Yeah, so with the two positions that you have open now, you'll be able to run 4 people with the 6 new, or would you have to, fill those vacancies?
We would have to, well, to fill the 2 we got open, plus add the 6 would give us what we need as far as the 2 per engine. Again, the Lawrence County Fire Department, when I came here in 2009, rarely left their district to go to Gray Court or Waterloo or Ecom or anywhere, Sandy Springs. It is pretty much a daily, if not weekly, response now for them to have to leave their district and go to Waterloo or go to Ecom to back up these volunteer stations, Sandy Springs, Young's. So, you know, their call volume is increasing, and we need staff. And I know this is a terrible time to ask for this, but we're going to be asking again next year. I hate to, you know, but this is just where we're at.
Let's follow along those lines. Do we have any kind of measures in place to make sure that we're not sending extra trucks to scenes that are not necessarily needed, or sending them to a scene that the fire is not needed at all?
Well, we have drastically reduced response right now with COVID-19 on medical calls. We're not sending the trucks we used to send because we're trying to cut down on exposures to first responders and that type of thing. We try our best to send just what we got to send, but until you know what you have on scene, sometimes we do send additional resources. But you know, that's not every call, but we do try to, we have the division chiefs that work a zone. We have the paid station, like the new Thompson Road station that has a zone that they work in. They're primarily going to respond in that area of the county, but if needed, they are called to go out and back up somebody else.
I do agree, we definitely need to have more than one person on the truck at night. It's not really safe. I think.
It's not safe at all.
It's not safe at all.
No.
Ms. Anderson? Mr. Wood?
I ain't got it.
Ms. Yance? No. Mr. Baxter? Hearing none, we've got a motion and proper second. I'll call for the vote. All in favor of adding 6 FTEs for the fire service, signify by raising your right hand. And those in opposition will like sign. Motion passes 5-2 with council members Wood and Pitts in opposition.
I'd like to make another motion, Mr. Chairman. I may
Yes, sir.
make a motion that we reduce part-time salaries, account number 11010 to $35,000 in the recommended column.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry to interrupt y'all, that action's already been taken. We've already done all of that. If you recall, we approved everything. So we approved that $35,000. It is in the recommended column. I mean, it is in the final column. The only thing you did not make a decision on was these 6 positions.
Okay. That's because of what we have in our package still showing 176. So we've already made it 35.
My apologies, your column should reflect 35.
We'll make sure of that. If not, we can adjust it before that we've done on the final budget.
Okay. You would
I'll
draw
withdraw my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. Next, I recognize Matt Pennington, Fund Line 128 EMS Shift Phase 1.
Mr. Chairman, can I recommend we put this in committee?
Yes, sir. Does that need to be in the form of a motion, or can we just assign?
I think you can do it.
Let's do it as a motion. Let's just go ahead.
Make a motion, we assign the 2472 shift phase 1 EMS to help. Which committee is that, Mr. Baxter?
Committee on Health and Emergency Services.
Committee on Health and Emergency Services.
Motion by Mr. Carroll. Is there a second? Second, Mr. McDaniel. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Those in opposition will like sign. Abstain. He just assigned that to, we just made a motion to assign that to a committee, wouldn't be discussed, and we meet with the committee in the future. That motion passes 6-0 to 1 with Councilmember Wood abstaining. Thank you, Matt. Next is, Dale Satterfield, heavy equipment operator position, line item 210.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, we are just now getting started with building a transfer station. And we're excited about that. We are trying to get geared up to start moving compaction soil for that. There is one position that we must have to put this transfer station in operation, and that is an HEO position to run the loader, solid tire loader, to push the debris into the open top trucks, to compact that debris into the trucks for transportation to the landfill, to the Greenville County landfill. So we are here to ask for funding of that one position to begin when the transfer station is constructed and it begins operation. We currently do not have an HEO position at the landfill. So this would be the one and only HEO position.
All right, you've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to add one FTE as a heavy equipment operator in the amount to not to exceed $55,000 for FY 21 for line 210, solid waste? I'll make a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Second for discussion. I'll open the floor for discussion. My right, your left. Mr. Carey.
54,716 will be a direct increase to the budget we have now. It's not in there at all. That's right. Can anyone else who's currently hired on an employee do that job?
The only person that we would have would be to take the landfill supervisor, Mr. Gerber, suspend him from being supervisor and allow him to operate equipment. That would be the only option we'd have. And that's not the recommended option.
I'm not trying to act dumb, but
I
did
know.
you know this when we decided to build the transfer station, we would need this person?
Yeah, so if you look at the net savings of $500,000 by having our own transfer station, this is a mandatory cost for us to have a transfer station. They actually requested more positions, and I've asked him to get it down to the bare bones, so he's actually removed several positions that they were requesting and got it down to this one position: you have to move trash.
Mr. Satterfield.
Yes.
That position, I don't think I want to ask this question. I remind me, Mr. Kane, question. The pay is coming out of the enterprise fund, which is funded by the now $55 fee per resident. Is that correct?
That's correct. There are a few other revenue sources, including tipping fees that we don't yet have quantified what volume of trash we will get, non-residential trash, but we will actually receive additional revenues. There are some revenues we receive from a host fee that is charged to other landfills such as Curry landfill. And then there also is a little bit of revenues that we receive from recyclables. So all of those
Just to
net
clarify,
revenues.
just like the fire we just voted on, this is on special fund, this isn't part of general fund.
That's correct.
But when do you need this first?
We would need this position probably in November, December.
The position will not be hired until the transfer station is about to open.
Yeah, what you're looking at is the annual salary. That will not be the actual cost for this particular budget we're discussing.
So you're not gonna hire this person to the transfer station is finished?
That's
right?
correct, yes, sir.
It's not a person you're gonna try to put out bids next week?
No, sir. No, sir, but it needs to be in the budget so that it's there so we can go into operation when ready.
Mr. McDaniel.
No questions.
Ms. Anderson.
This will be a full-time person for the coming year after that, but this price that we're talking about here, we won't be paying that much money because it's only gonna be a half a year, right? So
That is correct.
it's not gonna raise the budget this year, but half of what you asked for,
That's correct.
because we're not gonna hire to no number.
Correct.
If we we have the station finished there.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay, now, this is a new position, and how you determine the amount?
That is what the recommended salary is for an HEO, which I think was a pay grade 16.
It was the last page in our packet, or it was in mine anyway. All right, Mr. Wood, any questions? Mr. Yance?
What's involved to get an heavy equipment operator certified, if that's the right word?
We will advertise for someone who has experience on heavy equipment such as track hose, loaders, and then hopefully we'll be able to find someone at that current pay, which I don't think will be an issue, so.
Nobody in-house that you could.
We possibly could train someone up, but then that's gonna leave a laborer position open, so we'd have to hire for that as well. As Mr. Kami said, I have absolutely cut every position I can and feel and still think that we can load tires and grind trees and all the other many jobs that they do. So
That person's gonna have to be able to drive trucks too, because he's gonna be moving trailers behind the station and load this, and then he has to go back, move that trailer and bring
That's
it
correct.
back in. He's gonna be doing several different things.
And one of the positions we eliminated was another CDL driver. We're hoping that with the transfer station, that will lighten us up a little bit on the box site so that we can move a driver to the tractor trailers, so.
Mr. Patrick?
I guess the only other comment I have is if this passes, I would like to see if we have somebody eligible when the time comes to promote from within and rehire a laborer.
I always want to promote from within when all possible. Yes, sir.
Any other questions? All right, we have a motion that's been properly seconded. I'll call for the vote. All in favor of adding this FTE to the budget to be hired after completion of the transfer station? Signify by raising your right hand. 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the amended item, and that is the roads fee. I asked to add this. I received some communication, I'm gonna use that word, from several constituents over the concern of that. I think there's a misunderstanding among folks that we're addressing both state roads and county roads. It would only be the county roads. I will make a motion to postpone that implementation. I'm making that in the form of a motion to postpone that $10 increase. Is there a second for that motion?
Would that not have to be made by somebody that voted in the affirmative?
It's my understanding as a second meeting, it can be brought up by anyone. Are you seconding that, Ms. Anderson? Okay. Okay, I'll open the floor for discussion. I'll be giving my right, you're letting Mr. Carroll.
On your motion specifically, you wanted to postpone it till when?
Future date, no specific date. We can talk about it. I just, personally, I don't think the timing is right. Not with the impending capital sales tax. Mr. McDaniel, anything?
I think it's been, 13 years since we've actually raised it any amount. I'd be willing to entertain lowering the fee and not implementing the actual project. But I think we do need to start collecting some sort of revenue so that we could get it started in the future.
Same?
What I hear all the time, we want our road fixed, we want something done to our road, we want you to fix the potholes, we want you to do this. And they think everything that they think all the money that we receive from the state, the funds can do it, and it cannot do it. And the majority of the time, it goes to state roads anyway, so
We've been doing the best we can with what we have, and the only way I know we can do any better is that we have to do a fee. And if that is what they want, we have somebody come in here and say they don't want it about it, they don't want us to fix their roads, they want us to leave it alone. I feel a lot better about it, but I really feel like if they keep, I know they do to me, I don't know about anybody else, but they keep telling me they want the road fixed.
Mr. Wood?
Just like I said, it might be better to wait till this coming year to do this, because of unemployment and so forth.
Ms. Jones?
Well, the road just gonna keep getting worse and worse and worse. And not gonna get any better.
And I'll add one other thing, this is not just, a very few families out there, that ain't got 2 or 3 vehicles. So this multiplied by 2 or 3 or whatever the family owns, I mean, it's not just one vehicle. But making part of the families out here in Canton, that's all.
Mr. Travis?
For clarification, was this done at the last budget meeting or the last regular meeting?
Budget meeting.
Was it budget meeting? Okay. Because I was in opposition as 2 others were. I would continue to be in opposition, which what you're proposing will temporarily delay the fee increase and or reverse it. My only concern with that is setting a bad precedent of changing motions to a direct meeting after we make a motion just because we're not in agreement with what was decided.
So recognized. Any others? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of postponing the fee increase signify by raising your right hand. Those in opposition, like sign. And abstain. The motion fails. 4 to 2 to 1. Those voting in opposition are represented Councilman Carroll, McDaniel, Anderson, and Yonts, abstaining Councilman Patterson. I think I got that right. Next is executive session, and because all of you outnumber all of us, I'm changing my mind so you can stay apart and social distance. We will go back there.
Mr. Chairman, we're supposed to start our regular meeting in 5 minutes. So I'll make a motion, we recess this meeting until after the conclusion of our regular meeting.
Sounds good to me. There's a motion by Mr. Patterson to
I'll second it.
reset, take the recess. There's a second by Ms. Anderson. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. 7-0. Budget meeting is now in recess. Next is a regular council meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second regular council meeting. At this time, the meeting is now called to order. This time, I will ask
You must buy it. You got 5 minutes.
We're a little early.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Y'all want to go right into it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Meeting is not called to order.
I told you I can't read lips. I can barely hear. It's still live, okay. Everybody, you're all still live, just FYI.
I figured if it was.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second meeting of Lawrence County Council for the month of May 2020. This time I will call the meeting to order. At this time, I will invite everyone to please stand for the invocation provided by Councilman Patterson, followed by the pledge of allegiance.
Let's pray. Lord, thank you for bringing us here this evening, giving us all safe travels. Thank you for the rain to help the crops grow. I ask that you be with us this evening as we make decisions for the citizens of the county. Allow us your will to guide us as we make these decisions. In your name we pray. Amen.
Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. I couldn't help but think as we said this, that pledge, that we're in a time of our country and our world that I just don't remember a time like this. And we certainly need to seek God's guidance and his wisdom, and certainly try to work to get along from the federal level all the way down to the local level. I know that's a difficult task, but I certainly think, I'd like to publicly thank the members of council that I served alongside for that effort. It just hit me as we were saying the pledge. Next is the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the submitted agenda at this point? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the submitted agenda? So motion by Mr. McDaniel, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Anderson. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. 7-0. Next is approval of minutes of previous meetings. The first one is May 12th, 2020. Should have taken it in the other order, but nevertheless, it's this order. May 12th, 2020, regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the regularly called council meeting? Motion by Mr. Patterson. This is the regular meeting.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carroll. Any additions or deletions to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor signify by raising your right hand. 7-0. Next is the minutes from the budget meeting number 3. That should be dated May the 12th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as submitted? Motion by Mr. McDaniel.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carroll. Any additions or deletions? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of accepting the minutes as submitted, signify by raising your right hand. 7-0. Next is report to council. First one is COVID-19 update. Mr. Joey Avery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. I'll give you a COVID-19 update for Lawrence County. We had one new additional case reported today, and that brings our total cases to 58. Talk a little bit about testing. At our last meeting, Ms. Anderson asked a question about testing. Prisma Health and DHEC held a COVID-19 testing on the 23rd of May at E.B. Morse Elementary School. Had 260 people that showed up for that testing, which was, I thought, was a very good crowd. We also have 2 more scheduled, one on 4 June, and the location will be at Thornwell at 203 West Calhoun Street in Clinton. That's 4 June, and those have been running from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. 11 June, we will be back at E.B. Morris Elementary at 200 Parkview Drive, also 10 to 2. If we get a larger crowd there, they will stay and until they service everyone. As far as the operations of the buildings goes, everything is working very smoothly. The sheriff's department and the members that's working the front door are checking temperatures, and they're doing a really good job of keeping that organized. Most of the sneeze guards are in place. I'll call on Billy. Anything we're missing over there?
We're still missing our last order, but it's, after that order, trouble getting the plastic, the Lexan sheets to make this stuff. So after this last order, there won't be any of those, but hopefully we'll have permanent in by then. So we're looking at another couple of weeks for them.
So we basically got everything in place, and our PPE is still holding pretty strong. We are now looking at starting to build a stockpile because we feel like in the fall, we may have a spike and we don't have to jump through hoops to get the PPE that we need. So the supply system is starting to come about, but I've heard, it may slow down again in a few months. So we'll see how that works out. The library is still working very smoothly there. And I think Ann said that they were going to start some front porch. Is that the way she described that, Dr. Pitts? Front porch delivery for books that people may need since the bookmobile is not running. So, and they've been a great asset there, providing drop off. People can order their books online and pick them up on the curbside. And that's worked really well. I think the computers have been very heavily used since they opened back up. And that's pretty much it.
While we're on that, Jason, if you would step to the microphone, I forgot your name. Billy and Jason really worked, and Joey, with Ann at the library, but Jason did a sort of an in-service for those folks. It was so well received that he did I happened to walk in during your webinar with the statewide directors for the library. Can you just give them a brief overview of how that affected?
Sure.
Talk about it.
Sure.
Briefly.
I'll give credit to Ann. Was able to work with the staff and get in there and just look at the environment, and particularly from a psychological perspective, focus on signaling, right? Most people want to comply, but the thing is they don't necessarily know what to do. So Ann did a fantastic job of setting up arrows and displays and signs and roping sections off. That was so well received that she was talking to the state library system. And so they were inquiring, what about that process? How did they go about it? So I offered a webinar. We did about an 1.5-hour conference for all the libraries across the state. And I'm very proud to say that Lawrence was showcased as the best practice standard. Again, Ann taking the lead for that, really need to compliment her on the job that she did.
And could you just briefly mention in terms of HR, as we come back to work, we're in phase 1, we're getting ready to go into phase 2, some issues that surrounds federal law and human resources briefly.
Sure.
We do have an agenda item. We'll go into more depth on this subject.
We'll wait.
Wait.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Good.
Okay. Sorry. Billy, Joey, anything else?
Yes, sir.
How about traffic at Hillcrest today? I think I talked to Billy. Billy, can you address that?
Yeah, Jim, I think they were a little bit more busy. It looks like traffic is picking up, a lot more cars in the parking lot. So I think word's getting out. We're back opening slowly, and they're coming back to us slowly. So we haven't been overrun. Everything
We
was
only
going
have
well.
one open today, but it was backed up from time to time on the drive-through, but we have a good bit of foot traffic, but a lot more people using drive-through than they used to.
Yeah.
Since it's back open.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, any other council members?
I have a question for Mr. Avery and Billy, either one of y'all who can answer it. Right now, we're still under a state of emergency for the county. When we passed that resolution, it's open-ended, so it's in theory still active. Our purchases we're making to get refunded, do we have to stay under a state of emergency for those purchases? We do. Okay. Billy, how many much more purchasing are we expecting? Because obviously, I won't end it, but we don't end it if we're not gonna get refunded.
I'm buying stuff. It has slowed down a good bit. I'm still, if you'll notice those bottles at your stations there, those are, we're buying those in bulk, and they're made right in Fountain Inn. And I've given them to all the employees. A lot of the employees have been worried about having a pump bottle and everybody touching it. And it's made a difference. They're so appreciative and accepting of it. You know, you can use it, you can keep it on your person, you can keep it at your workstation, and you don't have to share it with anyone. So that's gone over great. And I'm not buying as much as I used to, but like Joey said, we're kind of in a stockpile run now because, you know, this stuff is going to hit again at some point in time. So, you know, we're kind of doing this and, you know, applying back to FEMA to be reimbursed for it.
All right, thank you to all the employees, especially Joey and Billy, for what you've all done. All right, moving on is FY 20 financial report summary. Ms. Kirk.
You have received your financial statements for April 2020. At this time, we have collected about 86% of our revenues in the general fund. We've expended about 82% of that. In all of our other funds, we have collected 90% or above as far as our revenues. The only exception to that is our victims advocate, and that has a lot to do in conjunction with the fact that the courts have been closed, fines and fees are low. So that's where a lot of our money comes in, but they are holding the expenses down in that area also.
Lisa, would you just briefly start on the revenue at 311 and just for the public and for us, just tell us what each of those lines means. Beginning with general property taxes, that's pretty obvious, that's property taxes, right?
That is correct. That is the property taxes that is collected from the treasurer's office. The reserve millage is the 6 mills that was put on some time ago.
Let's stop right there. The reason that negative is there is because we've collected an additional $216,243 from those 6 mills.
Yes, sir.
So it's not a negative, it's actually a positive, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, keep going.
Local option sales tax is the 29% or that resolution that was passed for us to keep, that those are those funds. You will see that local option sales tax has been down some simply because of the COVID-19. Your license and permits, which is at 491,369. That is mainly your building inspections, our franchise fees, mobile home fees. The intergovernmental revenue, this is the revenue that is sent from any governmental agency, whether it's state, local, municipal, anything we receive from another government agency. This is where our local government fund money sits, accommodation tax, money we receive from the library, Veterans Affairs, school districts, anything that is considered governmental.
Are you expecting more to come in that line item?
Yes, sir. We have not received any funds this year as far as local government fund, accommodation tax. The majority of all state funding, we're just now starting to see come in the first part of May. So there should be some changes to those figures in the month of May in the next financial statements. Our charges for service are like our probate fees, our magistrate fees, clerk of court fees, the contracts we have as far as the sheriff's office, any outside contracts whatsoever, our municipal inmate, any funds that we take in for any services that we charge. Our investment earnings are our interest earnings off of the investments that Cindy makes to the treasurer's office. Our contributions, private source is basically donations from anyone for particular purposes, whether it is restricted or non-restricted. Miscellaneous is basically that, miscellaneous. It's money that we received that we cannot logically fit into another one of the categories. Our other financing sources in this case are transfers in and transfers out from other funds. The money that we're showing here, the 35,000, is the money we received from the fire special district. And that's basically, payment for administrative services on our part, generating payroll, AP, everything we do for them. Fixed asset proceeds is when we have the yearly auction, and those are the proceeds we make off of that auction.
Good job. Any questions on the revenue side? I'm not gonna ask you to go through the expense line.
Yay!
Does anybody have any questions on the expense side? Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Next, 3 items are for information item only, does not require a vote. This is a reminder that the Capital Sales Tax Commission has the responsibility to accept the applications they so deem, and then to rank them. They will then submit them to council for final approval. Having said that, this is for an information item for application for the Veterans Department. Mr. King, are you presenting that?
Andy's here if you have any questions.
Andy. Sorry, Andy.
I'm kind of easy to miss. I'm so little. Good evening, council. We have submitted an application for a memorial park to be located at the Lawrence County Library. I believe it'll be a good location for remembrance, as it's a nice place, and it's right on West Main Street. That was submitted to the CPST. Whether or not they choose to put that in the CPST proposal would be up to them. And if you guys have any questions on that, I'm more than happy to answer.
Any questions, Andy? Thank you, Andy. Next, Matt Pennington, EMS headquarters facility.
That'd be Dale.
And Dale. Emergency services stage 1.
Yes, sir. We'll be very quick because we know you got a lengthy evening to go through yet. We submitted 2 projects to the capital sales tax. First project would be phase 1 of what would be the new emergency services complex that would house EMS, 911 dispatch, emergency operations center. That first phase, which would include the EMS headquarters, is estimated to be at about $5.8 million, 5.7. May or may not make the list, that's fine, but it is submitted to the capital sales tax. But the second portion of trying to provide adequate facilities for the EMS would be the rehabilitation of the current headquarters into Medic 1, which is the primary operations running calls for the city of Lawrence proper area. That would totally renovate that building inside and also add a ambulance bay for the ambulances that operate out of that facility that now sit out in the weather day after day after day. One of our most expensive rolling assets. That is about $314,000 to do that complete renovation of that facility. Matt will be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions of Matt or Dale? Thank you, gentlemen. Next, we move into old business, and the first is the second reading, ordinance 877, FY21 local option sales tax. Sorry, but I don't seem to have that in my packet. That's my fault, because I had to get an extra packet as I arrived. Can someone please
That's the ordinance that requires 100% of the money to be applied to the tax.
Repeat that again.
This was the revised version that calls for 100% of the local option sales tax money to be provided to taxpayers.
Okay. So, as I understand that, if we approve this revised ordinance tonight, we will not be retaining any of those funds as a county.
That's correct.
Okay. Just want to be sure I was right.
It does go pass third reading.
Sir?
It will have to pass a third reading.
Yes, it's the second reading, I believe.
That's correct, this second.
Okay, is there a motion to approve ordinance number 877? Motion by Mr. Wood, is there a second? Second by Mr. Patterson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by raising your right hand. 7-0. Next is second reading, ordinance 878, Project Archer.
Judge, speak to it.
Sure, I can't find the paper.
Okay. The first reading was done by title only, and we promised you we'd have the whole text of the ordinance before you tonight. The second reading, and that's what you have now. This is a new fee in lieu that is coming to Lawrence County. And you have outlined there that it'll be put into a multi-county park. It's 4,750 per megawatt hour. And right now, the minimum megawatts is 10 megawatts, which would produce revenue of $47,500 per year for at least a 30-year term.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 878, Project Archer for second reading?
So move to approve 878.
Motion by Mr. McDaniel, is there a second? Second by Ms. Anderson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by raising your right hand. 7-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next is Directive 513.1. I recognize Mr. Kenyon initially.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Council. This is just a rehash of the current soft opening conditions. Don't suspect that council would want to do any more aggressive opening than we currently have. Everything seems to be working well with the operations at the current level they are. However, there is some information here, and this is where we can get in more depth conversations with Jason in terms of the impact with HR, and in particular, looking at the new leave requirements as part of the, I think they call it the Families First Act. And Jason can give you more information on that. Jason, if you would.
Sure. So Families First is pretty simple. It just gives some leave opportunities that are an extension of the FMLA program for those that have dependent care challenges. So simply put, it allows for 2 weeks full pay at home to deal with those family care issues, with an extension of another 10 weeks at 2/3 pay, and that is eligible or available through the end of 2020.
Okay, that's what I was referencing earlier. This does not require a vote on this because it is federal law. Certainly.
I'm sorry, let me just bring, I should have.
I'm talking about the Families First.
Yeah, just want, there is a little more depth to this subject. In particular, if you look at the recommendation, the recommendation is a slight reclassification of essential employees to, Jason, if you would kind of build on that one a little bit on the recommendation.
Sure. So I provided, do you need a copy of the memo?
Y'all have a copy of it in your packet.
Here. There's a couple extra copies if you want. So in essence, the leave and the extension of that availability is, of course, federally mandated. However, there is a mechanism by which this government can, I would say, bridge the gap. Because there are circumstances where people don't want to take that leave, but don't have a choice from the standpoint of they have dependent care. So the way to bridge this gap and still make sure that we are not discriminating or doing anything wrong is basically a designation of what would be, of what we could call, so this is hypothetical at this point, a designation of what we could call eligible return or remote work. So there are jobs throughout the county that are exclusively focused around a computer. There are other jobs that are more labor intensive or require you to be in a physical space in order to do that work. So very much like we have deemed certain jobs as essential, and those employees continued to work over the past several weeks, we could designate certain jobs with definition as eligible to be remote work. By doing that, people could still do that work at home if they were eligible and if it was appropriate, and therefore wouldn't have to take leave for that period of time, but could work from home. The key is to make sure that the definition is very specific on what is work at home. Certain jobs would be classified or eligible for that, and certain jobs would not. That would be one mechanism or a way to bridge the gap, so that instead of having a large population go to the leave because of this dependent care, they could work from home, taking care of their dependents, and still function as far as the role and as the job, if council saw that as a reasonable and accommodating action.
Okay, thank you. He sort of laid it out for us. It's up to us. I will open the floor for discussion. Any discussion? Yeah. Go ahead.
Trevor, I have a question for you first. When the school's supposed to be out? What was the date? When's graduation?
June the 4th is graduation.
Okay, so in a week, we would have been in summer anyways, so people would have to figure out what to do with their children, just like the two of us up here that have kids still at home and younger age. So I guess as far as this, stay home to watch your kids, they'd have to figure out, if we wouldn't have COVID, they'd still be getting out of school next week. And we'd have to figure out what to do with their child. Just, I gotta figure out what to do with mine.
Yes, however, Jason, address that.
So the difference under the current COVID state is there are daycare, schools, and extension programs, after-school programs, summer programs that are all still closed.
In Lawrence County?
Yes. I mean, I don't have a specific list, but due to that structure and the federal and the state mandates, there are programs that are still closed.
And this policy allows them to take 2 weeks worth of vacation.
2 weeks full pay.
Non-consecutive?
No, consecutive. So 2 weeks plus 10 weeks more, so a total of 12 weeks. The last 10 weeks is 2/3 pay.
So we are required to pay people for 2 weeks under this family leave, and then an additional 10 weeks for with 2/3 pay.
And that is eligible through the end of 2020, not just the end of the school year.
So through this mechanism of allowing some eligible positions to work from home, that would be a mechanism that people could get paid but still produce work. This leave requirement does not require them to work.
Is that only for childcare reasons or let them work from home, or is that anybody that's eligible to have a work at home job can do so?
That would be up to your determination in the definition, but as far as the leave is concerned, it's dependence. So if they're taking care of somebody, specifically daycare and childcare, but if they have somebody that has COVID, the first 2 weeks, they would be eligible as well. So if they're taking care of a parent or a friend, something like that.
However, let me just add this. Should they take this 12 weeks, it would run concurrent with their sick leave, if we so designate, correct? Or their time off?
No, it would be specifically under this federal guideline. And then if they chose to take sick leave or if they chose to do anything else on top of that, then.
However, if the employer designates it to run concurrently, they can't take all of their sick leave and then take another 12 weeks if we so designate.
Yes, that's correct.
I do not have a desire, just as a council member, to pick and choose essential versus non-essential. That's just my preference. I don't know what the preference is of other council. That's why I'm opening the floor.
I think all of our employees are essential, Mr. Chairman, to this county and our citizens.
I would say we could easily follow the federal requirements if the employee came to us and said, I have to care for my child because they're diagnosed with COVID, or my daycare facility is closed, so I want to take this leave that's available to me through January 2021 or December 2020. We could do that, but trying to classify jobs as work from home eligible or non-essential, essential, then I think we might find that we have jobs that maybe we don't need, or could be done in a different way, and I don't think that's what we have. I think we could easily follow it without doing that.
I'm in agreement. Anybody else want to weigh in?
This is a full-time employee.
That's a good question. Do part-time employees qualify? I would assume part-time qualifies as well.
Yeah, anybody that's worked over 30 days will qualify.
How many days? 30?
30.
Yeah.
30 working days.
Part-time are eligible for it. Okay, you've got our.
They may respond on the part of, county employees. Very few county employees can work from home. In the offices, they've got to be in the office working with books and computers, but they can't do it from home. It's all tied in together. So if that helps in any way. People that work in treasurer's office, they can't work from home. People in my office can't work from home. Assessor, they have to be in there. So be very few jobs in the county that can work from
Several
home.
people have access to softwares that have to be strictly monitored that they can do.
Okay, all right, Jason, there's the direction from council. We will not classify essential and non-essential workers. Okay? Next is new business, copy release, recognize Billy Wilson.
You'll allow me,
Make a motion to approve.
There's a motion and a second. I'll open the floor for discussion. I got it. I want to hear it.
all right. Basically what we have, we're asking, to renew a lease or enter a lease, 48 months with Davis Business System, local business. We are roughly saving 36% per year at a total of $81,973.44 for the next 4 years. So
how much is the total annual lease?
the total annual lease, I didn't figure that part of it. It's a lot. I mean, I don't have
It's
my.
broken into many departments, so it's a little.
We got 50 machines, roughly 50 machines. I'll talk loudly as I walk, but here's what I have for you. Mr. Patterson asked for one, and I've got for the rest of it. There's basically it in a nutshell. So, we have right at 50 machines. So
36,608, that answer your question,
Okay.
So I'm asking that we, if you will allow us to pursue this and award the lease agreement, the contract agreement to Davis Business Systems.
Now, you got a motion and a second, but we're still on the floor for discussion. Do we take bids on this?
Yes, sir. We accepted, we had a total of 7 received, 6 were accepted, 1 was rejected because it didn't meet the deadline. We took roughly 4 of the top 4. Mr. Patterson was a big help in this. Ms. Hanks with IT was a big help in this. Autumn Taylor was a big help in this as she has been assisting me with purchasing duties. And due to COVID-19, we've done a lot of questioning and answering over the phone, back and forth amongst everybody, and this is what we come up with.
We pay the property tax on these machines.
Yes, sir.
Any others? I do want to commend Billy and Tammy and all of our county employees who work with them to, better allocate machine for this county. There was some, they were buying F-250s when they needed Ford Rangers. And, they did a good job of looking at what was actually needed, and that had a great deal to do with going from 57,000 a year to 36,000 a year, and did a fantastic job, and I appreciate their work.
Thank you, sir.
All right, hearing none, there's a motion that's been properly seconded, call for the vote, all in favor, signify by raising your right hand.
Thank you.
7-0.
The reason I went ahead and made a motion on that, I saw that savings of up to $80,000 for that period.
Next is, public comment time. Mr. Walsh, do we have any? None. Moving into county council comments, I'll begin my right, your left, Mr. Carroll.
None, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McDaniel.
I'll hold my time.
Mr. Wood. Yachts. Ms. Johnson. Ms. Pack.
I do have a question, talking back to Joey and Billy, Mr. Kaney. As far as the emergency order, and when that ends and us still getting funded, are there any grants or anything floating out there? I know we got, what, 30,000 for the airport ending? And then, are there anything else floating out there we're trying to get right now?
Lisa's here. She could tell you about a couple of ones that we're chasing. I think there was one through the Department of Justice that we were successful. Go ahead, Lisa.
We are currently submitting paperwork for one from the Department of Justice. Off the top of my head right this second, I don't remember exactly how much it was for. We just filed our first report with the state for our COVID expenses. Between payroll and the expenses we had recorded up until which date I did the report, a little bit better than $100,000. They had us actually projected the future of what we could possibly spend by the end of December. So they're looking at that to reimburse us as a part of that 1.9 billion that they got. So they're looking at the formulas now to reimburse us. That's not saying that that's all at this point. If we have to pay out the COVID leave that was just discussed, we're gonna have to file paperwork on that with the feds to get our funds back on it. So there's still a lot out there, and it's evolving. We started recording all these expenses, not knowing exactly what extent we needed to, and now that we at least have the first report, we've got a little bit more to go on. But this is a constant changing thing that we can't pinpoint right now.
And the airport federal, I assume?
The airport grant is, federal. It was, part of a $10 billion, amount of money that was designated to all airports. Lawrence County Airport got 30,000, and that has to be signed by Mr. Kamey and the attorney, through the e-signature process, since the FAA is working from home. So, once that's done, we should get that, and it's for use and basically operation of the airport, as long as we keep our employee, there full-time for the time being, until December 30th.
Thank you for getting that, and Mr. Thank you in your office for getting that.
The only comments I have, after our last budget meeting, the very next day, remember we talked about with Ms. Munyon and the chamber of possibly a $50,000 allocation coming out of the special resource fund, the fee in lieu of tax special resource fund, to support local small businesses. The very next day, I read in the state paper that Kershaw County had done the exact same thing the night before. So that made me feel really well that I think those two counties have at least begun to try to address the needs of small business as we are coming out of this. We haven't voted on it yet because Ms. Munyon will come back with us with a plan of action, whether it's through advertising or training or whatever she and her staff believe is best. But I want to thank this council for at least consideration of that. And then the next thing is, we began last year the annual employee recognition. I also recognize that we are still supposed to be practicing social distancing. We will have that at the county park on June the 26th. Those who wish to participate may, those who may not because of the social distancing, even though we will try to honor and practice those social distancing, certainly are not required to attend. But I think it is, I think it's a time for us to at least recognize our employees and thank them in person for the work they do. I hope they enjoy it as much as I do, getting to see our employees. And that is Friday, June the 26th. The letter that I sent out had the wrong date of the 28th.
I was just fixing to say you had 28.
I had 28, but it's the 26th. But nevertheless, that was that. Are there any others? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? And a second? Second by Mr. Carroll. Motion by Mr. Patton, second by Mr. Carroll. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. 7-0. We are adjourned 5 minutes.
We're going to take a session, call the girls back, take a session. If you want.
Yeah.